Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Better Body Radio. And today I'm joined by fellow Better Body coach, Mark Doherty. Mark, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Very, very well. It's been a couple of weeks since we've been on a podcast now as well.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Feels like a lot longer. But I know we've been like crazy busy, and I have a feeling September onwards is going to be absolutely manic as well.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So the topic of today, one thing we wanted to dive into was something that actually Coach Mal brought up, because it's certainly something that I think all of us as coaches have encountered at some stage with our clients, and it's something that Mal's had two clients approach her about recently, and I think having a podcast that kind of touches on that now will be a very timely thing to do. And it's on the concept of DNA testing, both in the context of prescribing what type of activity you should be doing, and also prescribing specific nutritional recommendations based on your DNA profile. So, Mark, do you want to maybe lead in with that? Because I know that's something certainly that you've spoken a bit about before as well.
Yeah, man, it was funny because there's some really good nutritionist I know, can't remember his name, and he put it out that something about giving the saliva from his dog, and they would get a certain amount of tests, and they would tell him, yeah, that's what you should follow, this and that. So basically, it's telling you, yeah, some funny stories going about between certain coaches on it. I'm not a fan of it at all, and we'll discuss why. So some of it tells you, right, oh, you're a low carbs will suit you better than high carbs, or you're an endurance-based athlete, talks about slow twitch and fast twitch. So basically, this type of training suits you better. And basically, we'll talk about the nutrition side first. As far as low carb and high carb, I feel like if we look at studies on diabetes, there is no real best diet that suits everybody. And we also have to take into consideration as well preference. So if truly a low carb diet did suit someone better, what if they preferred carbs? Would that mean that they would be sustainable and stay on the low carb process? And unfortunately, like for DNA testing, the studies show that you will get the same effects for fat loss if you go keep protein consistent, calorie deficit the same, and go high carb versus high carb, low fat versus high fat, low carb. And we know it's well established science as of the minute. And if we look at like every top nutritional scientist, Martin McDonald, Alan Oregon, what their thoughts are on DNA testing, they just say it's rubbish. It's not strong enough. It's not effective at the minute. Now, maybe in 5 years or 10 years, they might come out with fantastic technology that might help. But for me, a good coach will find out a blueprint for that particular client. Basically, what actually suits this client better, as in preference is key to make it sustainable, because we want to look at something that you can do year after year after year. If someone hates low carb dieting, they're not going to do it year 2, year 3. And does that mean because they're going to be optimal, or would you prefer them to be slightly less optimal, lose less than 2 pound less body fat by keeping in something they prefer? And then as far as the training concern, like muscle is muscle, right? Let's look at it. We know that the best way to increase muscle tissue is through progressive overload. I think we spoke before in different stimuluses, and when you reach advanced levels, what you can do and varying off that. But like, we know there is no correct training for body types. It's almost DNA testing is like saying, oh, this is your body type, or this is what suits you. I'm going way off tangent now because I actually do not agree with it at all. Yeah, so I just think it's another BS scam, unfortunately. And there's so many people doing it. I know around Dubai, and they charge a lot of money for it. And yeah, and I think the same
brands as well, right? So you've got, what is it? You've got DNA Fit as one. You've got a bunch of different brands. And so I remember, like you were saying, from Mark McDonald. Mark McDonald actually did his PhD research around, well, he did a bunch of stuff in PCOS, but he actually was part of some of the initial studies around these actual tests, like DNA tests. And obviously it was based on this idea of using IgG antibodies, which we know only gives you literally a snapshot right there at that moment in time. So it doesn't actually give you a very good picture of what's going on across a broad set of time, right? Which is obviously what's relevant is what's happening across a space of days, weeks, months.
Yeah.
And realistically, if we want to get any form of accuracy, you actually need IgA, or I think it's IgAA testing. And even then, you still have to be, there's a lot of context to take into account as well. So I think if you're just looking at these commercial DNA tests, like Mark said, freaking run away and steer clear, because they're just they're trying to just make money off of you. If you look at it as well, like who was that I spoke to? I remember we went to a course. I don't know if you ever heard of the Fitter Food guys. It's like Matt and Keris. They're like a couple from the UK.
Yeah, I actually know them quite well.
Ah, okay.
From a long back in my body type nutrition days. Yeah, I know the guys from a long time ago.
They were over here doing a seminar a good number of years ago now, and they both talked about these as well and said they were rubbish. And so Matt's a big lump of a boy. Anyone who's ever seen Matt, he's like 6 foot odd, and he's a big lump of a boy. And it told him that he was like something like 65 or 70% cardio dominant, and he was just kind of like, no, because he's not. He's obviously very well built for strength and power and everything else.
Yeah.
So I think one of the big takeaways from the training side of things is that, yes, there's going to be certain people who have certain structures or frames that certainly lend better towards certain activities, especially from a performance standpoint. But if we're looking at just overall function, performance, body composition, at the end of the day, everyone can develop their energy systems. Everyone can develop their aerobic capacity, their anaerobic capacity. People can improve their mitochondrial density. They can build muscle tissue. Yes, your skinny ectomorphic guys might find it a bit more challenging, but they can still do it. So I think basing any training or nutrition recommendations based off a DNA test just has no basis to it, because physiology is a physiology, and we have to play with the cards we're dealt and move.
And as you say, it's like training is you be specific to a client's goal. A client wants to put on muscle tissue, and a DNA test says, oh no, you're built for endurance. I guarantee we could take that same client, put them on the right nutrition protocol, put them on the right training program, and have them built like a shit house in 1 year. So so that's that.
The research and kind of what's coming. I was trying to find the guy's name quickly, but I'll see if I can link it in the show notes. There's a guy who's a guest on one of the Muscle Mentors podcasts not too long ago, and he is essentially part of a company which does epigenetic profile testing, where, and bear in mind that they test this, right? And if you look at genes and how they express themselves, there's no, and this is the same idea with the DNA testing as well, you can't look at one gene or one aspect of your DNA in isolation. In order to get a complete picture, you have to look at how genes express themselves when working in tandem with other genes as well. And so to look at things like this, one gene says, oh, you shouldn't eat all these list of 30 odd foods because your genes say this. It's like, right, well, okay, but what about if we had to move that person who's currently in a place of, say, metabolic resistance, or they've got very low muscle tissue at this stage, or they've got very low activity, and we improve their lifestyle factors, and then we redo that test again, and the genes are expressing themselves in a very different way, and then all of a sudden, actually, they can tolerate certain foods, or their gut's a little bit better. And so I think, when it comes to epigenetics in general, it's very multifaceted. And so the guys who are really, really switched on with this stuff, and the report, from what I understand, is about a 95-page report that has to be interpreted when they print out as well. That's not something that the lay public is going to be able to do. That's something you're going to have to work with a professional who understands what they're doing. And this is just starting to come out in America, and they are going to try and provide education and launch a bit more globally, from my understanding at least. But that just shows you that's the people who actually know this stuff, and they're like, we're still got a long way to go here. So I think for those who are in Dubai, or anyone who listens to our podcast specifically, as far as things go with DNA testing at the moment, stay clear, because the guys who are leading the front line on this are still trying to get initial, best practice out into the market at this point in time.
Yeah. And they can come to us, and we'll use our brains, and we'll get them results they want up here, our computer.
Practical way, work. So there you go. So I think that's great. Is there anything else you want to finish?
Man, there's no point in, I don't want to waffle on about the subject, because it's fast, furious, and that's the point. and we just don't agree with it. We know, like as you said, top experts are still working out. Yes, potentially in the future you might have some interesting data, but it looks like 5 or 10 years away. But for now, waste of money.
Yeah, instead, hire a coach, work on the mental side, get that mental game strong, then get your body strong, get your nutrition habits on point, lower your stress, get plenty of more sleep, jamming.
Cool.
All sounds simple on paper, but it's getting a coach to guide you through it. That's the real key.